Well, hello, everyone. How are you guys doing today? I'm sorry. How are you guys doing today? There we go. My name is RaeLynn McAfee, and I'm the program director for the Sports Marketing and Media program here. And shout out to you guys. I like it. All right. I have three amazing panelists here with me to talk about the business and infrastructure of esports. You guys ready to learn?
Yes.
You guys ready to learn? Yeah, that's what I like. All right, so let's start off with our first panelist. Mr. Matt Potthoff is the general manager for eUnited. He is also a 2013 entertainment business graduate. Let's give it up for Matt. Welcome. All right, next on our panel we have Mr. Michael Reilly. He is the founder and CEO of Endemic, and he is a 2005 film graduate. Let's give it up for Mike. Welcome. All right, our third and final panelist here is Mr. John Kracum. He is the president of Florida Mayhem and the vice president of Misfits Gaming. Let's welcome John to the stage. Welcome, John. Welcome. All right. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. I know these guys are ready to learn a little bit about esports, and I am as well. So always learning, learn and grow. Why don't we start off? You guys can just give a quick little bio about yourself and what you do with each of your organizations.
Hi everyone, my name is Matthew Potthoff. I'm the general manager at eUnited. I came here in 2010, graduated in 2013 with a bachelor's in entertainment business, and it's just great to be back here at the school, kind of coming full circle and being able to take advantage of this opportunity and talk about esports. You guys are absolutely blessed to have this arena with you guys. So.
Yeah, you can clap for that. That's my name is Michael Reilly. I was a 2005 film grad. We didn't have esports here at Full Sail in 2005, nor did the world really. There's a lot of overlap in entertainment business, as obviously you guys all know. A lot of content in esports, so it kind of became, and I've always been a lifelong gamer, so it was kind of a natural progression when I had an opportunity. I moved into it. I was with Apple for 11 years after Full Sail, and then some of the connections I made in the business, we were able to kind of parlay that into the esports world. So that's how I got here from film.
And I'm the one who wasn't smart and mature enough to decide to come to Full Sail. So I've been playing catch up a little bit, but I did end up going to law school after my undergrad, worked in Silicon Valley for a few years with startup companies, have been a lifelong gamer. Counter-Strike was my first love, World of Warcraft, and now whatever I can play. But was lucky to eventually work my way into a job at Misfits, and have since then gotten the opportunity to take control of some of what we're doing with the Florida Mayhem, and hopefully over the next year or so, especially as we move everything in market, to start doing a lot more in Florida to support Florida gaming. So.
All right, I'm going to start off with an easy one, guys, then I'll get a little tougher on you. We're going to use this session to really open the curtain to the business and the structure of esports. As many of my students know here, and many that don't, I have a history in traditional sports, and so sports is a business, sports is entertainment, as you mentioned, Mike. So I would love to learn a little bit more about your organization, your business. Let's start off with how many people are within your organization, and that can include both your athletes and your front office staff.
At the moment, we have about 51 staff members, including professional players. Professional players is leaning towards 37, if I'm counting right. Hopefully, when they're watching this, they're like, oh man, you missed it by one person or so. But
they won't know which one.
Exactly, that is very true. But yeah, I essentially negotiate their contract. My job is really to find that middle ground on what makes the organization happy and what's going to make the player and their agent happy. I feel like I'm really creative, finding ways to strategize with that player to make sure that we're, either helping them up front or later down the road, and making sure that they're rewarded over time for performing. Because I'm never a fan of having players be complacent if they're performing well and they're striving to reach their goals on their own. I want to make sure that they're compensated for that.
Awesome. Great. Thanks. What about you, Mike?
In our organization, we have, let's see, right now I believe 15 players. There's some that aren't announced yet, so I have to minus the ones that we're in negotiations with.
Top secret.
Yeah. And then our staff is roughly, we have staff everywhere. That's kind of the cool thing about esports, right? You don't really have to always have this office that everyone works in. And obviously that's in a lot of entertainment industries. You can do a lot of telecommuting, right? But I would say we probably, with who we work with and even just on our own payroll, probably about 15 to 20 and all around the world. I have some designers in the UK. It's great. It's a global esports community. I know these guys can speak to that. And, obviously you need to have your core people, but then, you can even have players all around the world. So it's really cool. It's really neat the way that the organizational structure of esports compared to some other businesses.
Yeah, definitely. We'll get deeper into those for sure. Yeah. John, what about you?
So we have across Misfits and Mayhem, is how I think about this question. We have about 35 gamers, I'll say, most of whom are professional and play in leagues or competitions, but a few streamers and influencers as well. And then we have about the same number of staff, these guys spread across the US and the world. I'm in the Bay Area. We got LA, Florida, Germany, UK, France, I think, Serbia. So. It's a good group to corral sometimes, but yeah. And then in terms of my role within the org, if that's part of the question, a lot of what I do now, focused on the Mayhem, is about high-level partnerships. So working with groups like Full Sail to understand how we can do things with the Armada and with the student body here. Orlando Health has been another partner for us. We're working on a deal with Gift of Life, which is a great organization that does bone marrow transplants. So, finding ways for us to not only succeed as an organization, but to turn that success into meaningful contributions to the gaming community and our local community.
Awesome. Very exciting. So I want to pick a little more on those international and those telecommuters, and maybe let's break down a little bit, what types of roles do you have in those offices, that you may or may not go to every day, but in your home office, and then what types of roles are people telecommuting?
So I guess just starting from the top bottom, we have our two owners, both based in LA. Then right beneath them is myself and our other co-general manager, Dan Clerkey. We're both from St. Louis, Missouri, and they were fortunate enough to give us this opportunity to, trust us in running all of our teams and making the decisions that we have to.
Out of St. Louis?
Yes, out of St. Louis. We have a creative director underneath us that's from New York. He operates our designs, our preview scoreboards, a lot of our social media strategies. Underneath him is a social media manager with graphic designers that assist with memes and other fun stuff that we like to do on a day-by-day basis. And by the way, if you're really good at memeing, you'll have a job in esports instantly, because
note that.
It's really important to keep the social feeds entertaining and not dry at all times. So, and then outside of that, we just have our coaches, managers. I actually hired my brother as someone who could update spreadsheets and make sure that our jerseys are arriving at the right times for our players, making sure that our products and partnerships, peripherals are getting to our players on time before their events. So there's a lot of different opportunities and routes to take in esports, and yeah.
It's a good combination of different roles. Again, in my traditional sports mind, you've got your operations. He's doing all those logistics, Excel spreadsheets, but he's also the equipment manager, making sure that the uniforms are coming in and travel, any of those types of logistics as well, right? Very exciting. Mike.
To avoid redundancy, very similar structure with us. I'm the owner and I'm CEO. I operate. I make sure all of our people are doing what they need to be doing. But my kind of the hand of the king is my guy. We have one guy out in the East Coast because I'm in LA, but sometimes, you need access to either players or events that are happening in, on the other side of the country. And very early I learned I couldn't be everywhere all at one time. Like I remember last year, one of our big events, I had to be in 3 places at once. And that was the moment I was like, oh my God, like we're growing. Like this is esports. Like funny story, so we were big in Hearthstone, and we were also starting I see some Hearthstone fans, great. So our one player that we picked up, he was qualifying. He was playing in summer championships, and this was his when we signed him, he had right been on the cusp of starting to become great. And he had this event in LA that he had to compete in, but I had already had an engagement at CEO, which is here in Orlando. It's a fighting game. Well, we got some Jabali fans out there. Can I get a Jabated in the chat? Alex is great. And I remember I had to be there, and I'm like, dude, but this is the most important event ever for us for Hearthstone, but I already had a commitment to CEO in Daytona. So we went reverse. I flew my East Coast manager to LA to handle that and be there for him, and then I flew here to Florida so I could take the meetings and recruit our Street Fighter V player who's great. His name's Shine. So it's interesting. Sometimes you kind of have to be super adaptable and kind of know kind of place your chips like your toy soldiers, right? The people that work for you. You need to say, okay, well, who can manage this team? Or does he know this genre? Does she or is she plugged into this community? Let me have her head up this. You used to come from this genre, but why don't we have you head up the fighting game community? And why don't we? So I think that again to avoid redundancy, but kind of elaborate on what Matt said. Sometimes you have to make sure that your people know certain games, or you can teach them and say hey, you know what, you're managing people, and if you're great at managing people and managing confidence in your team and making sure that their morale is up, whatever, then you'd be able to to adapt very quickly, especially when new games come out. That's another thing too. So
right.
Yeah,
definitely. What about you guys, John?
Yeah, I think the only huge thing that I'd like to add is how important communication is, because everything that they said is totally right for us as well, which is we're constantly, I fly across the country a ton. I go to Europe once or twice a year. Hopefully I'll go to Korea for events in the near future. But I can't be in 2 places at once, 3 places at once, just like these guys can't. And so a lot of my job becomes making sure that not only am I talking to everybody in the org who is at all the places they need to be, but I am making sure that those people are talking to each other. And so all of the information gets shared, and people can be confident that they know the left hand is busy working on the thing that's going to support the right hand. So that's, and I think that's the only way that most of these organizations can succeed, because we are so global and so spread out, which is an amazing opportunity, but also a fun challenge.
Discord's great. Discord really helps with that. Yep. Or Slack, depending on what your organization is.
I was just going to ask, what's your major form of communication with your staff and or athletes altogether?
At the current moment, we use Slack just to talk about day-to-day operations through text. At the same time, we're all in the Discord talking about video games, what's going on with our players, what projects we need to do, and we're also trash talking other organizations at the same time, just having some fun, just keeping the morale as high as you can.
It's not sports if you're not trash talking.
Exactly. You got to have fun while you're working, and I feel like we do a really good job of that at United.
Awesome. So that's, you guys, Mike, you mentioned this. We'll start with you on this. Company culture is a big part of an organization's success. Why don't you guys fill us in on, well, maybe one, what you feel your company culture is, as well as what are some of the aspects that you look for when you're hiring someone into your org or on your teams as an athlete or as a staff member? What is it that you're looking for that differentiates them from the next person in the line?
So I'd probably say our North Star is we have 2 main value, our core values, you could say. Our main North Star is that everything we do has to be authentic. So there are a lot of esports orgs in the business, right? You got 2 great ones to the left and right of me, and when you're coming into this space as someone kind of new, these audiences, they can instantly detect if something is just like a cash grab or like a lack of authenticity. So when I decided to get into this space, my partner. I was looking for a partner. Obviously, I knew I couldn't do it all myself, and through my connections in traditional sports and the NBA, I had a lot of NBA athletes saying, "Hey, I'm in. This is the wave. Like, I know esports is huge. I love gaming. I'm a gamer." And I'm like, "Well, what games do you play? Or what specifically what esports are you into? Because there's obviously a big difference between esports and gaming." And I had a lot of interesting answers, and I was like, dude, I'm not trying to be another NRG. No shade to NRG, but I'm like, love Shaq, love him, put him on Overwatch League. But I was like, look, man, if we're going to come into this space, it has to be something that people can say, okay, I get it. Like, they belong here, kind of thing. And that's why our name's endemic. It means native. Like, we've been here, we just hadn't come to the esports space yet. So when I was looking for a partner, my friend Ronnie 2K, he's from the 2K, I'm sure you've heard of that game, NBA 2K. He was like, have you met Paul George? Have you talked to Paul George? And I'm like, well, I've in passing, I think we have mutual friends, but I never really met him. He's like, dude, we should set up a dinner. You should talk to PG because he's huge into gaming. And then, when we met, we were having dinner or whatever, and I was like, so what makes you the guy that I should partner with? And he was like, I convinced Nike to put the PlayStation logo on my signature shoe. And I was like, all right. So I'm like, that's pretty authentic, that's way prior to, so I'm like, okay, that's how we do it, that proves, and that was before he was in esports. So we said, now we can come to the table and say it's legit, and so when we hire new staff or anybody else, everybody has to be kind of bought into that authenticity, that you don't have to be like, not every designer and all the people are like the huge esports people necessarily, but you have to come to it with, there's no half measures. You have to come all in and really love this. You have to love this space, because things change so much, and it's so fast paced. Like, you could end up hating it, if you don't really love what you're doing. And I mean that's just obviously universal to any business, right? But so that's kind of our North Star. And then the other small value. Oh, it's not small, but our other smaller one, the one right below it, is kind of like, we all, since we're a newer org, we grow together. We all eat together. So it's kind of like, we come up together. If the org is doing well, you're going to do well. It's symbiotic, and that's important for us. We never want it to feel like it's like everything's just rising to the top, and it's like, hey, cool, we're like he said, it has to feel like a full-blown family, kind of thing. So we always, that's another culture piece for us.
I love it. Absolutely. John, what about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that would, I would echo. I think when we think about it internally, we probably flip those two things, although both are super important. Treating everybody on staff and all of our players like family is I think, the core value of the Misfits and Mayhem. And that's true, even in cases where that's more difficult. We always treat players and staff with respect. From the day that we sign them and everybody's super excited, to the day that they move on to their next team, or we decide that we have to leave a game, which we've had to do a couple of times. So that's understanding, everybody understanding that people are at the table with a sense of mutual respect and working for the benefit of each other makes us function as a group, whether we're in the same room or whether we're in different continents. And then authenticity is another big piece, and that comes from a very strict rule that was set by Ben Spoon, our CEO, which is, if you don't play video games, you don't get hired. That's the rule for getting. That's one of the core rules of being hired at Misfits or Mayhem, is you have to play games and love playing games. And so that kind of passion for the industry is super important. Now I get to hire, and Our last 2 hires for the Mayhem social media side have been Anthony, our graphic designer, and now Brandon, our junior social media guy, who have both been super involved in Tier 2 and Tier 3 Overwatch for the last year and a half at least. They're incredibly passionate about the gaming community and specifically Overwatch. And the difference between hiring a person like that versus hiring somebody who knows social media or knows graphic design but doesn't have that passion for the sport is just, it blows me away in terms of what they can accomplish and what they can bring to everybody else in the team. So that
The passion comes through in their work. Obviously.
absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, for us, it's fans first. We always focus on our supporters and try to find ways to engage with them at tournaments, and that's where our creative staff and myself and even players chime in if they want to figure out ways to activate with our fans, whether it's meet and greets, giving away product at events, whether it's including them in on giveaways. We really try to focus on making sure our fans are having a fun time at tournaments. And then for a personal goal for myself, I competed professionally in Call of Duty for 4 years. I have played under 16 different organizations, so I kind of got the taste of being traded without having a say. If my manager came to me and said, hey, you're going to be playing for this organization, I didn't have a say. So I got to really understand what good management was like and what terrible management was like. And I noticed from traveling across the world and playing, when I had a good manager with me at all times, I felt like I was playing at my prime. They were bringing me waters, they were bringing me snacks, they were giving me hand warmers, and it's just those small extra things that really helped me focus on the game. So I try to take those same strategies and applied it to myself as a general manager. And even though it's outside of my contract, and I guess you could kind of relate it to what Gary Jones said outside, it's kind of going outside of your job description and just making sure that you're doing all the extra things. And that's what we look for when we hire people. We have everyone going above and beyond their contract. They're really showing why they deserve to be working at E United, and I'm sure these guys have valuable staff members too that are doing everything that they can to make sure that they're staying safe. They're showing why they're worth it, and we've made fires for the opposite reason, just people who join and don't put in the extra effort. They're not asking what they can do to help. They're not asking what they can do to get better, and most importantly, they're not taking criticism. If someone messes up and you have the majority of the company saying, hey, it'd be best to try this route or to take it a different way, if they're accepting of that, then they probably have a good head on their shoulders and understand what it takes to adjust and change for the better of the organization. And if not, that's like strike one, and if it happens again, then you might have to make changes to keep moving forward.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Now, all of you guys are either previous or current gamers, correct?
Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
So did you all start in the player space and then move in? I know you talked a little bit about it, Mike, but we have a lot of people that play the games currently, and others that may or may not play professionally but may still want to get into it. How do you guys recruit and or hire staff? So recruit athletes and or hire your staff?
You want to start?
Yeah, I could start. So obviously I previously mentioned Hearthstone. I keep getting the thumbs ups in the crowd when I talk about Hearthstone. I love it. Originally, I predate Hearthstone. I played Magic the Gathering for a really long time, and I toured the country playing that game. And obviously Magic was never really an esport then. It's becoming one now because of Arena, but Hearthstone was kind of the first card game esport, and we saw a lot of traction with it. So that was the first game we got into, and to speak to Matt's point, the fact that I was able to bring that experience, from being a competitive card gamer for so long to the esports space with Hearthstone, I was able to connect with our players in a way that I felt like gave us a real edge. When you're in the trenches, when you're a competitive gamer, you can really, like he said, there's these small little things that really help, your players. And if you can tap into that, and if you can know what's really important to a player's mental, to a player's physical. Hey, dude, like you need to hydrate, you need to be eating, you need to be snacking X amount of time. These long tournaments. I mean, card gaming tournaments are like 9 rounds. You're talking about and they're like 50-minute rounds, so it's like all day, and you're sitting there, and then like you're sitting for X amount of time. Like, dude, you need to stand up, you need to get your like little cardio in, etc. For real. I mean, it's insane. Like you need to get your blood flowing, things like that. Like gamers can be so blinders on sometimes because they just want to just keep owning and just keep winning, and sometimes you forget to like take care of yourself. Things like that. Like when you're able to have that perspective and then deliver that to your player, it gives us such an edge. And I mean, my players have told me that, and I'm not going to sit up here and be like, oh, I really like this is so great, like toot my own horn type thing. But like that's my measure of success. Like when my players tell me like, hey, that really helped, that really affected me. Thank you for this. One time I was like in a really upset mood, and like one of my players actually came to me. It was like the only time I've ever shown any emotion to my players. I was upset about something, like the way a deal was going, other personal stuff going on, and like it was like we were in DreamHack Atlanta, and dude, there's so many fans. I'm just gonna keep naming stuff. It's like, who here loves Austin? Yeah. But that's an easy way to get a crowd. But I was in DreamHack Atlanta, and I was like super bummed out about a number of things. And it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. I was like finishing making sure a giveaway we were doing was going right. And one of my players comes to me, and he's like the quiet guy who's just like really, really good at games, but he doesn't really talk that much. And he comes up to me and he's like, hey Mike, I know you're kind of sad right now, and I just like want to let you know, we need you. And I'm like, what? And like my head was in my hands because I'm dealing with this, and I'm like, and he's like, before you signed me, I had never won anything, and then I just won HCT Oakland. And like before you signed Killen, he could only get 9th place, and now he's qualified for Worlds. Yeah, he's a Killen all day fan. Yeah, Yocad. And then he's like, so we. Like you're there for us. This space, specific, and that's why Hearthstone was the first game we went into, because I knew that I could do that, and that's when I snapped out of it instantaneously, and I'm like, dude, like that's my measure of success. Like forget money, forget revenue, forget sponsorships. Like that is the measure of success for us, and that's that authentic piece. That's that family piece. Like it all came to me at that moment, and he's 100% right. Like little things like that add up. Little things like hand warmers, things like that. Here's a Red Bull, whatever, water, whatever. So I would say that. I think that my experience as a gamer prior to that is really invaluable. Like I think that we wouldn't be the org we are today if I didn't have that experience, for sure.
So is everyone, most of the employees, prior professional gamers, or maybe just competitive, or?
I mean, at least for us, a lot of them, yes. Like I have a gentleman who plays. He was in COD. And he was in Halo too, and he played with Ninja. It's pretty funny. So like he's one of the only guys who like gives Ninja a hard time all the time, and I'm like, this is great. And yeah, a lot of we have a couple Magic the Gathering. We have a couple League of Legends. One of the things we also do. That's a great question. One of the things we also do is like if you retire. Like if your time is kind of coming up, we give you the opportunity to say, okay, well, like if I see that initiative, if I see that business acumen, and not everybody, like some gamers are just, they're the guy that just wants to go out there and do the job, and that's it. But some have that interest in the business side, the stuff that he does, right? And then they say, oh, well, could you tell me a little more about that? Or they want to learn about why this decision was made or what this was. And then those are the guys and girls that I say, okay, well, if you're interested in being potentially in this space on a high, on a front office side, sure, kind of like the Magic Johnson or whatever, even though he's a bad example because he just left the Lakers, but like things like that, like, you say, okay, well, now you can be in this space if you have that interest or that business acumen or that passion or whatever. So I would say a lot of them do, yeah.
Awesome. What about your team, John?
I think fewer of our staff were professional players before they started with us. a handful were, but most of them really, and I think where we find a lot of exciting hires are just super passionate fans, and that's and I think especially in our biggest games, League and Overwatch, like that, to be a professional there now is super demanding, and it's a pretty rare thing to accomplish, and there hasn't been that really transition of the first set of professional Overwatch League players, for sure, into staff roles. But there are amazing fans everywhere, and fans that, most importantly, have the drive to start doing things themselves. And that's, when people ask, how do I get hired? The last 3 people I've hired have had unofficial social media accounts, have started their own Discord channels where people who do the things that they like doing get involved, and so they've run kind of their own communities. And so that is where that's where I see a lot of the passion coming from in our current staff. Eventually we will have a lot of ex-pros, I think, on the Overwatch side joining us as well. But however, I think that no matter how that passion, how you kind of show your passion, having shown that passion is the key thing. And that's, so yeah, I think we get a lot of the same value out of passionate fans that Mike was just talking about getting from ex-pros. Maybe not in the moment I realize this is when you need a hand warmer, and so I'm going to run up behind you and give you a hand warmer kind of knowledge, but a lot of the same stuff. And so it's, and a lot of the same support for each other and understanding that what we're doing is creating something really exciting, and then that can be wonderful. So that's, but that said, everybody has played games pretty seriously to some level or another. Even if they're not pro, we've put in our 10,000 hours online. And
definitely. So the esports universe has grown tremendously. I think 2018, it's fair to say, was one of the largest growths in the industry and largest jumps. So what is your guys' organizational takeaway from this past year? What is it, maybe the biggest things that happened, and what are some aspects that, looking forward, hey, we're going to be able to do this next? You guys just take it from here as to what happened this past year and moving forward into 2019.
Yeah, I think there's just a lot of opportunity right now. There's a lot of investment, a lot of excitement around esports, and hopefully I think all 3 of us can agree that we're hoping the right people find investments, and it's not going towards individuals who just have a good keynote speech or something that really don't have the experience to back up what they're talking about, because those failures do impact all of us that are passionate about esports. So it's really just hoping that investors are finding the right, organizations. Those organizations are following the right guidelines to stay professional and making sure that they're doing everything that they can to keep moving esports in the right forward direction.
As far as what happened, Fortnite happened.
I didn't answer that part either. It's okay. I'll let Mike cover that.
Fortnite did happen.
And yeah, that's a hot button topic for esports specifically. We were just having that conversation backstage, and I had a great conversation with a gentleman. He's a grad, Sean from Epic, yesterday at dinner. So that was cool, and I gave some feedback, and we're going to be continuing that conversation. But that really kind of put esports into the mainstream, right? It became this thing that it's just like everyone knows like esports now, and it was like, prior generations are knowing now, like, wait, there's a business in this, and there's like, this is a career path. I remember we were at the Fortnite E3, that event, because Paul teams with Myth, so they played, and then there was like an after party at E3, and I remember I was at like one of the areas where there were one of the bartenders, and she was like, so you mean to tell me that like these guys are making like millions? And I'm like, yeah, kind of. And then she was like, that's funny. She's like, because when I heard that, she's like, I have a son, and I used to tell him, you better get off those damn video games and go do your homework. And she's like, now I tell him, you better finish your homework so you can get on those damn video games right now. because this is crazy. Like, she was like, what is it? She's like, well, you guys rented it. It was like the Los Angeles Olympic Memorial Coliseum, like where they had the Olympics. They rented the whole thing out. And it was just one big Fortnite party. It was like, that's not even where they played. They played in the LA Football Club. That's where they played the event. They rented this just for a party, and then like Logic just came out and started performing, and everyone's like, this is a private part. What is Logic doing here? You know, like, so that amount of money that's in this space now because of this game, you know, and that it's struggling as an esport because of some things, and they're dropping a blade into the game, you know, when people are practicing for 3 months. You know, I was just telling him we had a player who had been practicing for 3 months, and then this like they just put this infinity blade in the game, and he's like, yeah, so I was ready to qualify, and then I died to a plane and I died to a sword. And we're like, what? You know, so there's obviously I can hear a lot of rumbling. The community definitely knows what I'm talking about here,
yeah.
for sure. So, but you know, while that's the unfortunate side of it, obviously it can't be understated what Fortnite has done as far as putting esports on, like, or at least competitive gaming and gaming as a profession on the world stage. Like, now people know this is a thing. And then when they came and said, hey, $100 million pro, you know, series, that, you know, Ninja was already making a ton of money, and people already knew who he was and his posters in Walmart and everything like that. But now it's like when they said, we're going to invest this much money, no other league had ever invested any amount of money like that into their prize for the players, ever. And we're a very players first org, just like Matt was saying. His org is. So, you know, like, that was like, oh, well, I mean, you know, okay. Like, then now that we get Fortnite players, like, obviously we got to be part of this, right? So I think that was the big thing that changed and kind of really put the eye on esports, where it was like on all these, you know, traditional networks of, you know, news networks, or and parents are talking about it, and then kids are doing the dance and everything like that, you know, like, that's really, I think, what really kind of elevated. And like Matt said, we want investments to be right, and we want the leagues, the games that are in these devs that bring this game into whatever esport they bring, we want it to be done right, because a rising tide lifts all ships, you know? So it's like, there's a lot of people, and I'll this will be a great segue for him, is that, you know, there's a lot of people talk about Overwatch League, and there's like detractors, and there's people that love Overwatch League and think it's great. As in the esports business, whether or not you love Overwatch League or love Overwatch as a game, or think, you know, GOAT meta or whatever it is, and like, you know, a dead game, there's so many memes about Overwatch, right? It's like, no matter what you think, if you're in the esports business, you want Overwatch League to succeed. It has to, because otherwise, like, all this investment that went into it, all of a sudden people are like, you know, the people that are not really plugged into esports, and like these giant VC firms and all this investment would just be like, oh, so look at that, $40 million just lost, that investment, like, whatever, oh, esports is trash, you know? And then that would just, like, then the traditional world would just, like, be like, see, that was a fad, that was a fluke. So, like, we need Overwatch League to succeed. We need the franchised esports to succeed, and that's really his area of expertise. And you know,
No pressure, John.
Right, yeah.
No pressure.
No, I mean, I think that yeah, Fortnite is probably the headliner for what's changed, but I can absolutely, I'm happy to talk about Overwatch League, and I think that has been a big piece of it. Not just Overwatch League, but they've been the kind of the thought leader on how to create a traditional sports league, at least the way Americans think of traditional sports, with gamers, and not just like how to make a season and then playoffs and a championship, but how do we let fans come and watch the games? I grew up in the Midwest, and the first event I ever went to was a League of Legends quarterfinal in Chicago in I can't remember what year it was, 2014 maybe, 2016, something like that.
Chicago?
Yeah.
I think it's 2016. Yeah, 2016, yeah.
Yeah, but like, there was nothing to go to. And I think CEO is great out here. Like, that's an awesome event, but it's not, you know, it's something that comes once a year, and then you've got smaller events and things, but how do we create a fan experience? How do we create a meaningful league that can hopefully compete with stuff like the NBA, the NFL, not right away, but in 5-10 years, start to get into that conversation. And so I think the key to Overwatch League is that the architecture of the league is meant specifically to allow the league to do that, to grow to a point where it exists in the conversation of NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, NHL. And that's exciting. I mean, that's really fun. Not just from a perspective of somebody who loves esports, and that's a big piece of it, but also as a sports fan. I'm a huge baseball fan, and to think that I could be part of a team that creates a home team for Floridians is awesome. Because I love the Milwaukee Brewers because I grew up just south of Milwaukee, and it's a really cool. Just kind of a new structure that it's not new to the world, but it's new to esports that I think should succeed, and there is a lot of pressure on it to succeed, but it brings so much value, I think, to the ecosystem, and it does have a lot of fun and good and smart people working on it all the time, both at the team level and at the league level, that it's kind of a great first try, great proof of concept.
Franchise leagues in general, right? I mean, that's that and he's the one that has the two franchise league. Between the three of us, his organization has in both franchised esports, so right. League of Legends and Overwatch League. So, no, exactly, and we need that to succeed, right? Like you're saying. So, I mean, it's great that there's organizations like yours that are bought into that are saying let's make this a thing.
I think we need it to grow. We need it to be able for the whole industry to grow as much as we all want it to grow, as much as any esports fan wants it to grow. I want it to be as big as the NBA. I want esports in general to be sports. And so at some level there has to be that large scale league. And alongside that comes everything else that we all love doing. And all the other fighting game tournaments that we go to, and new games that we get involved in and find ways to support. So that's, I think, being able to start talking about adding that huge scale level of infrastructure, that NBA, NFL level of competition, helps bring us into the mainstream, just like Fortnite has. It helps change the conversation around esports. It helps change the conversation between parents and kids, and it helps me have more fun with games.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on the echoing the Fortnite and Ninja craze, and just like you stated with the relationships between their parents and their kids, I feel like 2018 was really the year where gaming almost became socially acceptable for parents to actually approve of their children putting in time in the video games, because I can tell you from middle school until the end of high school, my parents were there for me, but in terms of supporting me playing Call of Duty or World of Warcraft, those were dark times in my gaming days. But it took a long time for me to persuade my parents until I brought home my first paycheck from gaming, where they're like, all right, now you can pursue this. That took almost 8 years of persuading, a lot of grinding, just a lot of sacrifices to get to that point where my parents were okay with it. And I think as time goes on, we're just seeing more and more parents fully supportive of their kids, playing Fortnite or playing their favorite game and pursuing it as long as they're getting good grades or they're trying to balance gaming with something else. That conversation is at least happening, and it's because of Ninja, it's because of Fortnite, it's just the professionalism that's happened over the past year and a half has really helped with that. And I think a lot of these streamers on Twitch are playing a really big part on trying to make sure that they're realizing how many eyeballs are on them. They're realizing how important they are, and they're trying to be a good voice for the gaming community, and that's helping a lot.
Definitely. I have to say, as an educator, Mike, I'm glad you said get your work done first and then game, right?
That wasn't me specifically, but yes, I understand that.
Good
she was
advice.
right. But no, and that's the thing, right? I mean, like he said, it's funny how that legitimizes things, right? To quote Cyndi Lauper, money changes everything, right? So as soon as all of a sudden you bring your first paycheck home from gaming, your parents are like, oh, yeah, this is great. Yeah, it's funny. Same thing. Yeah, exactly. It's never legitimate until then.
Right. So obviously here at Full Sail, no matter what degree you're in, you're talking about if it's media or if it's the entertainment world, a lot of the conversation is how do you generate revenue from whatever brand it is that you're working with. And John, I know this is kind of up your alley specifically, and you guys all mentioned the culture of maybe General America accepting the games this past year. Now, how are you guys approaching maybe corporate America and saying, now you can support us, now that the public knows about us? Is the largest revenue generation for your guys' teams now going to be from corporate America, or what other stream might be largest for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for the games for our big games, for League and for Overwatch, the goal is to monetize pretty much how the NBA monetizes, and the elephant in the room is media rights. Like how do we create a media product and have enough eyes on that and make it interesting and exciting enough and fun enough that ESPN, ABC, Disney, came to us and wanted to buy that and put it on TV. Twitch, we're in a Twitch deal right now, and how do we continue to explore and push what we do online and how we give free access to all these games to people, even while we can make the league can make money on it. And so media rights has driven a ton of money in the entertainment industry forever, and that's always going to be the big one for the big leagues. Added to that is sponsorships, and I'm sure these guys have had similar conversations to the ones I've had, where depending on who you're talking to, that can be somebody saying, hey, we love esports and want to get involved, and it can be somebody saying, I don't understand what you're talking about. Like I explain these numbers to me, and spend the next year and a half selling me on why I need to be a partner to Misfits Gaming or the Florida Mayhem.
Usually the latter.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's a lot of slow education to companies, but it's worth it on both sides, and bringing in good partners who are excited to be there in the first case, or B, who can provide new value to esports and unlock the door to all kinds of organizations and teams and players, to working with travel partners or working with credit card companies, whatever these kind of big things are when you think of the Dallas Cowboys and the New York Yankees, or the Jacksonville Jaguars locally, or Orlando Magic. There's a ton of opportunity, going back to the last two questions we've been talking about, and so in terms of how we interact with the business world, it's just a matter of us continually presenting those opportunities to people and saying, we understand the value that we bring, and we believe in it a lot. This is a great industry to be part of, and people like you and all our fans are super passionate and love being part of not only us but our partners, and that's it's funny. To add on to that small piece, there was a study that I looked at recently that the average esports fan is, I wish I could remember the exact number, but it's something like 3 or 4 times as likely to buy a sponsored product than the average NFL fan, which is huge to go to a potential sponsor and say,
loyalty.
Our fans are loyal, and they care about who is bringing something to the space. So that's an exciting part.
The support. Your fans know you guys need support, and when you have these organizations jumping on to support you, they're going to say thank you to that, right? So why don't you talk a little bit about another, and this is going to be my last question, but then we're going to open it up to the crowd so you guys can get your questions ready, okay? Another determinant of success is absolutely going to be the growth of your fan audience and that loyalty that you talked about, right, John? So how is it, Matt, that you guys market your brand to help increase your audience, and then on the flip side, keep them loyal?
So retaining our audience and growing it is really based on 2 factors, in my opinion. One is your social media strategy. Social media is everything, and I'll continue to say that every single day. YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, just knowing the right language to state for all those different platforms, because it is different, and making sure that you're utilizing sending a videographer to every event, and you're capturing those moments and putting it into a documentary, and really, that's kind of the full circle of putting your non-endemic and endemic partners in those videos, and just making sure that you're doing everything you can to represent your fans and your partners while you're doing your social media strategy and building content around the storylines. The second is performance. So we see tremendous amount of increased engagements, increased impressions, more potential sponsorship phone calls when our players are performing. And on those weekends, if we place first, that video is probably going to get over 50 to 60,000 views. If we place dead last, we have to figure out a way to make a story out of that still and make sure that we're not wasting money while we're going to tournaments. And it's my job to make sure that that glue is there, that our players are performing, and that I'm assisting our creative director to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep it all in the family.
Absolutely. What about you guys, Mike? Are you guys doing anything different, out of the ordinary, different platforms that you're trying to grow that audience, or are they coming to you?
I mean, really, a lot of fan bases are baked into the games or the genres that that they're passionate about, right? But we've done some things like we were in a game called Heroes of the Storm, which was like we love that game though. That was a Blizzard title, and when the league died, we kind of wanted to do something different for our players, because they're players, they're real people too, they're like, well, how am I gonna pay my bills or whatever, this league just ended, and we didn't want to release them, right? So we said, well, it's a creative way that is financially viable that we can do to kind of support these players and also kind of show the world via social media what we're about. So we partner with Ult. They're an esports clothing, and
we're with them too.
Yeah, they're with them too. That's why I can't be mean to him. And and we compete against each other in PUBG as well. And no, Ult's great, and we partner with Ult to do a limited edition shirt. It was like a long sleeve, and this wasn't part of our normal capsule or our merch, and it said the end, which end is our prefix as it is, because endemic, so end is always the prefix you see whenever we compete, but it said the end in terms of the league, and then on the back in an epitaph font it had the roster that would have been, because we had just picked up a kid who had played for 3 years and finally was good enough to get into the league, and then they canceled the league. And that tweet went viral for him. He was like, I worked so hard and now it's canceled. I'm so sad. And he's 19 or whatever. And that broke my heart. So I was like, we need to do something right. So we wanted to make sure he felt like he was on the roster, even though he never played it down, so to speak, So we put him on the roster on that shirt, and then we did a limited time, and it sold out. And then what we did was we gave all the proceeds to the players. That was the whole point of it. And Ult, when I pitched this idea to Ult, they were like, we love it, we're doing it. So little creative ways to kind of engage with the fan audience, because we had a big fan base in Heroes, and when that game, the game didn't die, but when the league died, it was unfortunate. So it's how do you engage with those, because then you'll just lose those fans, right? What if they're not a Hearthstone fan? What if they're not a PUBG fan? What if they're not a Street Fighter 5 or Mortal Kombat 11 fan? So that's how people, when they saw that, they're like, we're endemic fans for life, and that's kind of that fan retention and creative way to engage. So that's a story I could share with that.
I love it. All right, we've got a little bit of time here. Any questions? I think we've got a microphone back there and over on that side. If you guys want to hop up and head to the microphone, probably two quick questions. And then I think these guys are going to stick around a little bit for you guys, maybe on the back patio to talk with you guys as well. All right, go ahead.
Maybe we can fit 3. We'll see.
How you guys doing?
3.
My name's Alfonso Stevenson from Sports Marketing and Media. So right now, the 2K League is kind of growing really big. Do you guys see in the near future minor league teams happening? And if you do, how does that impact, hiring staff as far as just strictly for sports? Or do you take your staff that you have now and say, hey, go learn 2K or FIFA or MLB?
So the 2K League's interesting because it's all of the actual traditional sports teams have their subsidiary as
Like the Orlando Magic have their own.
right, like Magic Gaming, which is a partner of Full Sail University.
Shout out.
But when you have those organizations, they kind of control all of that. Like some of us are able to do like a consulting. There's one esports team that like does consulting for I think the Jazz. But some of them have like that partnership. I know he has partnership with the Miami Heat, so he can kind of speak on that. But that's the tricky part of the 2K League is the fact that there's so much regulation because the NBA, they're saying this is an NBA product. Like it's not just like an
They're
open
controlling their
sport.
brand.
Yeah, and it's and because of the fact that those teams are actually like you're not allowed to have your Cloud9 or your Endemic or your E United. Like it has to be Magic Gaming or the 76ers Club or Heat Check, right? So, but he can speak additionally to that, I'm sure.
Yeah, I can add a little bit to that. I mean, we're partners actually with both HeatCheck and Magic Gaming, which is funny, but they're both great groups. And yeah, a lot of what Mike said was right. Is right. A lot of the growth of the 2K League will be just a choice of NBA leadership in terms of what they want that to turn into. This is something that across different titles, you see handled different ways by publishers. Blizzard, since they decided to create Overwatch League, has been a lot more strict about what other tournaments exist in the ecosystem. Same with Riot Games to an extent. Whereas fighting games, depending on the publisher, you can go and throw whatever event you want and play Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat or anything, and that's some will even help support that, which is awesome.
Yeah, the super homebrew community.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. It's really cool. But for the 2K League being on the opposite end of that, it really is a question that NBA executives are sitting down and talking about, and they're saying, what does the 2K League mean to the NBA and mean to our fans? And so as it continues to grow, I mean, there will be more opportunity, I'm sure. It's a lot of NBA owners, and we talk a lot with Magic and Heat, but talk a little bit with a lot of other people in the NBA. It's they're smart and forward-looking people who think pretty highly, are very interested in esports, which is why they started the 2K League. So they're not afraid to take next steps and grow. I think they just are, they don't live and die on it maybe as much as some of the other leagues do. So they may grow more slowly as a result.
No, that makes perfect sense. Thank you. All right, another question over here.
Hi, my name is Jesse Valiente. I'm in the entertainment business program. And I'm newer to like the esports scene, like as a spectator and whatnot, but I'm interested in the business. And I had probably a dumb question for you guys, but do you guys see like puzzle games and like ARGs being something that could come into esports, or hang on, there's like a second part to the question, and if so, like what would be like the process of getting that into like a league or whatever?
Was that puzzle games?
Like puzzle games and like alternate reality games.
Oh, alternate reality. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of just answering this generally, and I hope this helps. I feel like any game really has an opportunity to grow into an esport as long as the fan base is there, as long as individuals are passionate about putting on tournaments and having competition happen between the two. I think anything can realistically turn into, a self-driven esport.
Yeah, the quick litmus test for what can be an esport is like kind of like he said, it really boils down to one thing: is it watchable? Can you watch something? Like there's the game Artifact that came out that was a pretty decent game. It was a card game that was supposed to be the Hearthstone killer, the Magic killer, and it was like very complex and people liked it, but it was just absolutely abysmal to watch, and the game just died. It was Valve. That was a Valve product, and they had they put like millions of dollars behind it, but you just couldn't watch it. There's like 3 boards going on at a time and like stuff like that. It's like you could have the most dope game that you can compete at, but the two things that, really the number one litmus test for an esport is it watchable? Number 2 is, can you compete at it, which obviously is kind of price of admission, but like, is it watchable? So if someone came up with like a a puzzle game. Like people were playing Tetris Battle Royale for a little while, right? When that's
really popular.
Yeah, when 10, that's
That's
technically
my
kind of a
game.
puzzle game. Yeah, so like people were streaming that and people were watching that. You know, as long as it's something that people can enjoy and get entertainment out of, then it can be an esport. Yeah.
Yeah, I specifically wanted to touch base on Tetris, not just because of Tetris 99, which has been really fun and awesome, but I'm a big GDQ fan. I don't know if
Oh, I love,
watches GDQ.
speedrunning for sure. There you go. That's a
It's
perfect
phenomenal.
example.
But they, starting maybe 4 or 5 years ago, they introduced Tetris speedruns or Tetris showcases as part of the event. And the first couple of them, all of them have been just really cool to watch. The first couple, though, I think got a huge reaction from the people who were watching the stream, from the people who were there not knowing what to expect. And so just that's an example of a puzzle game that played at the highest level can be amazing to watch, and Tetris 99 now is a way to really kind of have a compelling competition around it too. So it's not impossible that games like that, whether it is Tetris or some other kind of puzzle game, can find the right mix of talent and interest and type of competition to make it work.
Awesome. Well, I hate to cut the questions short, but we do have to be respectful of time. But these guys are going to stick around. You guys can stick around and talk with them. We're going to head out onto the back patio. I want to thank everyone for attending. These guys also have within the bios, within the app, check out their contact information, reach out, connect with them. Please help me give a really big round of applause for our 3 gentlemen today.